What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Football Guys YouTube channel here. I have a guest today. We're going to bring in Christian Williams, my co-host on the College Football Guys show. And we're back with another Dynasty video. We're going to have some fun with this one. We're talking about overrated Dynasty assets. I know that you guys in the comments are going to be so nice to us. I'm so ready for this. I'm so excited for that. But we're going to get into our guys here that we think are overrated. We have two each, and we're going to be talking about, where their value's at, where's you can pivot. So Dynasty pivot. We always like to bring strategy on the shows and kind of talk about, if we're talking about this guy being overvalued, then what would we do? What are some actionable takeaways from that? Not just overvalued, here's why, let's move on. Okay, he's overvalued, so what should we do with him? So we're going to be doing that here on the show. Let's dive into the first one. Christian's got a spicy one. We got Travis Etienne on the board. His keep trade cut value is running back 7. His current ADP, according to DLF ADP, is 5th round, running back 10. Last year, he finished at 204 fantasy points per game, about running back 17. Had a few good spike weeks, and a lot of people are hanging on to that one. So why the heck do you have him as your overvalued? That was the first guy you sent me. Overvalued Travis Etienne. Why is that?
Yeah, it was actually an easy, I've had this in my mind pretty much all off season. There are a lot of different reasons. So he finished as RB17, but from a points per game basis, he was down at RB24. And so you look at what that offense was last year, he was the focal point. After they moved off of James Robinson, I think they wanted to go into a committee, but they didn't have the ability. JaMychal Hasty was kind of that other guy there. This offseason, they added Tank Bigsby with day 2 capital. And so now you're looking at a situation where Doug Peterson is going to be, in that comfort zone where he can implement a committee. And when you look at the two skill sets, I think it's very much so a thunder and lightning situation. But that thunder and lightning situation certainly limits the upside of Travis Etienne. So I know a lot of people are saying, well, Travis Etienne's going to get all of the work. And Tank Bigsby is just kind of there as a backup running back. I do not think that will be the case, simply because Tank Bigsby, from a pass catching perspective, he's a more refined pass catcher. I think he's better at pass blocking as well. So then you look at, down on the goal line, I think Tank Bigsby probably fits that profile a little bit better. So the highest value fantasy points are coming from catching passes and scoring touchdowns. I do wonder what the split is between Etienne and Bigsby. And because of that RB24 finish, when the situation was very good for him, I don't know what is kind of garnering the top 10 ADP right now. So yeah. I'm just pretty out on Travis Etienne right now.
Yeah, and Etienne's getting valued, like maybe his ADP is running back 10, but he is getting valued as a top 7 guy. And I think it's just the running back position where you have it. As far as pivoting, so when we talk about dynasty pivoting, and this is a concept of like, okay, if you don't want him, if you have him, will you tier down? So essentially, you're looking at your running back tiers, you go to dynasty rankings that we have at Football Guys, and looking at that next tier of guys, is there a comfortability with trading Etienne for one of those guys? Is get that same production and then get an asset, maybe a pick or something with it? Or do you try to tier up, get in that upper echelon tier, maybe add something to Etienne? So that's what we're looking at when we're talking about pivoting. Right now, as you can see, so based on our ranks, we have Jahmyr Gibbs at running back 5, Saquon at 6, Ken Walker at 7, then Etienne is in there at 8. Then we have Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, and Javonte Williams. So based on that, do we tier down then, get into that maybe that Eckler, Pollard, Javonte range, or Najee Harris? Or do you maybe add an asset to try to go get like a Gibbs type asset?
So I think that very much so depends on your build and kind of what you're attempting to do. If you're in a really win now situation, I think tiering down actually makes the most sense. I think, when you look at the immediate production of Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, guys like that, even Nick Chubb down at RB15 in our dynasty rankings, those are guys that I think you can throw into your lineup, and they're very much so going to outperform Travis Etienne in 2023. And then you could be walking into a fantasy championship. If you tier up to Gibbs, I also think Gibbs is rightfully inside our top 5. Saquon, I think Saquon's going to have a fantastic year, contract aside. Those are guys that I think you might actually be pushing that production back a little bit from what Etienne is going to provide this year. So I'd actually go ahead and tier down, try to get some more assets, and then maybe turn those other assets into other things because you're going full force into win now.
Yeah.
territory.
No, I agree. I think tearing down, getting that collection, that asset, and you're just looking at from fantasy production this year. Will that guy supplant, Etienne? And I think with Bigsby being there, I think there is something to know. Like we could see a different split in usage, and then you're losing value. Once dynasty managers think that, I think there is that. Now, if you're an Etienne guy, there are people out there that love Etienne, and you're not going to like this conversation at all. Just understand that there are ranges of outcome that you have to understand with these assets. Now, your next guy is the hardest guy to rank in Dynasty. His name is Deebo Samuel, plays for the San Francisco 49ers. His keep trade cut is wide receiver 30. His ADP, though, is 5th round wide receiver 19, and we actually have him as wide receiver 28 range in our Dynasty rankings. So, last year, obviously injured, 168 fantasy points, wide receiver 40. What's our argument with Deebo being overvalued right now?
So I think when you look at the lifespan of a wide receiver, Debo's very much so on the tail end of that. I think he's 26, turning 27, but the way that he plays the game is very much so different from your traditional wide receiver. He's taken a beating. He could not stay healthy last year. The production dipped very significantly last year. So wide receiver 37, I think, is around where he finished last year. And so you already saw signs of that decline a little bit last year. Insert Brandon Ayuk, who I know, there's been a hype train for Brandon Ayuk the last few years, but from all accounts, I mean, he has taken that next step to be the wide receiver 1 of the 49ers. We talked about this a little bit on the college show a couple weeks ago now, where, I think Deebo he's going to have to see a different type of role. And the quarterback change there is something to keep an eye on. But when you look at Deebo's lifespan, what that looks like on the 49ers moving forward, I just don't see how he accumulates value and you can turn him into better assets either.
I agree. I think he's a sunk cost asset as soon as you draft him. Like sunk cost dynasty asset. And with Brandon Ayuk, I think he is a steal right now. Like I love Brandon Ayuk's value. I think where he's going right now in drafts is a steal. And yeah, that's the thing of Deebo. No matter where you get him, I think it's a sunk cost. I don't see him being an undervalued asset at all. He might produce a little bit, but again, injuries, like you mentioned, there's those things. When you're looking at his pivots and you're going through those wide receiver, you talked about Ayuk. He's at wide receiver 22, Godwin at 23, Devontae, Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Treylon Burks, Deebo, Pickens, Dotson, Deontay Johnson. To me, the guy that stands out to me, if I was going to pivot down a little bit, depending on where his value is, Deontay's a perfect target. Deontay Johnson from the Steelers, I feel like can produce better this year and will hold long-standing value for at least the next 2 years, if not 3 years. Do you agree with that? Do you think maybe Deontay's a good pivot down if you're going to try to collect assets and get Deontay?
Oh, yeah. So there are a ton of pivot down options, in my opinion. So you've got Deontay there. You've got Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley kind of sitting in that range as well. Yeah. I think Amari Cooper is going to outperform Deebo over the next 2 years. I have a piece coming out about Amari Cooper here soon on Football Guys. So Rashad Bateman, even, there are just a ton of different options where I think you're in better shape having them on your roster than you would be Deebo.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of pivots you can get down there. And if you can pivot off of him into those guys, I'm doing it. I'm going to go grab them and definitely with Deontay. I think Cooper's a great call for this year because really you're looking at a 1-year asset with Deebo. So if you're going to trade a one-off 1-year asset, Cooper's one of those guys. You just trade off that asset and you go. Now, my guy. So I'm going to throw out one of my guys here, Jordan Love, Green Bay quarterback. And this is hurtful because I like Jordan Love. We've talked about Jordan Love a lot. It's just a quarterback 17 on keep trade cut. His ADP is at QB 17. So he is going in that 4th round. Just based on where he's getting valued right now, he's getting valued ahead of guys like Jared Goff, in that range. And I struggle to see this offense really opening it up. Like I think with Jordan Love, I do think this is going to be a heavy run offense with Dylan and Aaron Jones. He's only attempted 83 passes since 2020. There's a lot of unknowns about him. And if you're putting in quarterback 17 value on a guy like Jordan Love, and you don't necessarily know if he's going to be a long-term quarterback, this is maybe an 8-game quarterback you're getting at that value. I just feel like he's a little overvalued with some of the guys out there. And when you're looking at the pivots, When you're thinking of like, Kenny Pickett in that range, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Trey Lance is down there. So if you believe in those talents down there, you can definitely pivot down there. I think Russell Wilson is a good target if you're like a win now team and you want to kind of get that QB2, and maybe the guy that has Russell Wilson isn't necessarily a contender and maybe believes in Love and wants to kind of get youthful. That's a good area there. But if you could absolutely trade, like, I don't know anybody out there would trade Love for Goff straight up. Maybe they're out there, maybe they are where they're any valued. But if I can move off Love for Goff, and I'm not even a huge Goff believer, I think that's the move. As a Love, not necessarily a Love guy, but guys, we both like hope he does well this year. How do you feel about Love being overvalued?
Yeah, I mean, when I did my 2023 projections and he came out where he did, which he's my QB 25 right now. And so when you look at if he performs as the QB 25 this year, that's, back to your Deebo argument, that's a sunk cost. I don't think he will then accumulate value unless he does enough to where he gets this good long-term contract from the Packers. I just don't know if that's what's going to happen. I think there are it's a risky pick that high inside the top 20. Whereas like if he were 4 spots later, I might be more interested in him. But right now I'm a little nervous as well. So good call there.
Yeah, if you're going around that Derek Carr range, okay, like I'll take a shot on Love over Carr based on what we've seen. But no, not in that 17, 16 range where you're probably relying on these guys to really be your QB2 for at least 2 or 3 years in your Superflex leagues. I'm worried about that. We are going to talk about my last one because I want to make Bills fans mad. Dalton Kincaid is my overvalued asset from the tight end position. Keep Trade Cut is tight end 6. ADP is tight end 6. So he is going as a top 6 tight end already. To me, I just feel like when we've talked about this multiple times on different shows, on our own show here, Dawson Knox is not left for dead. Historically speaking, Dalton Kincaid and rookies in general in the Bills system, they get brought along really slow. I think Kincaid could maybe start out slow. I really question. So if you look at our dynasty rankings and where we're pivoting or not, Kincaid's coming in for us at tight end 8, but in the market, he's tight end 6. He's going ahead of guys like Dallas Goedert. Pat Freiermuth, for me, I have a hard time drafting Dalton Kincaid over Pat Freiermuth from the floor perspective. I understand the ceiling play, and I get Kincaid does offer that, but you're asking Kincaid to really overcome a lot as a rookie tight end in a system that doesn't necessarily highlight the rookies very well. And then you have Dawson Knox still out there, Gabe Davis, you have Stephon Diggs, you have some of the pass catching backs with James Cook in there. I just think it's a tough sell for me. If you have him, I don't mind maybe, tearing down a little bit. You see Michael Mayer there. We're big believers in Mayer, can be the tight end 2 in that system. I really like Mayer there, and plus an asset, right? And with the tight end position, unless you think Kincaid can be a legit top 5 guy, you're pounding the table for that. Why wouldn't you just tear down a little bit, get more assets, and still get the finish probably around what you get with Kincaid? That's where I'm looking at with Kincaid and that overvalued status.
Yeah, I mean, other pivot downs, Chig Okonkwo, I think, is a really good one. I think people are going to be shocked at his production this year. David Njoku, I think the Cleveland offense is going to allow for Njoku to outproduce Kincaid this first year. So I think when you look at that from a value perspective, I think those are definitely good options.
All right. Well, we just made everybody mad. We appreciate you guys here with the overvalued assets. I think when you're looking at dynasty assets, knowing where that overvalued is and then understanding how to tear down and pivot up and do all those different things, I think it's very, very important when we're talking about dynasty strategy. It's not that we don't like these guys. We just think that there's other ways that you can kind of accumulate what their fantasy output can be and then collect assets. And that's what we're all looking here to do, is to gain that value. So let us know in the comments. We'll jump in there. Let's spar it out. Etienne stands and Kincaid stands. Not sure there's very many Samuel and Love stands, but if there are, come tell us. What do you guys think? Who would you be comfortable tearing down? What is your expectations there with these guys? We appreciate you guys. Christian, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you guys next time.